So where are we in this continued fight for election answers? And also, what does the MAGA movement feel like right now? How are things going? We've got our friend Harlan Hill joining us now. He's a political consultant. He knows everybody inside the Beltway in D.C. you need to know, connected to the White House, and a good man, a good friend of mine. Harlan, thanks for joining.
It's great to be with you, Buck.
What are you thinking right now? Just give me where are we in trying to get answers? I've been telling people about this, the YouTube censorship. YouTube now openly saying if you say the election was stolen, we're gonna take you offline. You're done. And we have people who are jumping through hoops now to just try to avoid censorship. But Trump's not giving up at all, Harlan. What do you see happening?
Well, on one hand, I mean, this is going to impact a lot of people that we know, Buck. There are legitimate concerns that should be raised in the court of public opinion. They should be investigated by journalists in this country. And unfortunately, the mainstream media has abdicated their responsibility as the fourth estate to chase down these legitimate cases of fraud. And now, there are so many businesses on the right who derive, a lot of income from their videos on YouTube. And now they're going to have to make the decision. Are we going to stand with our principles, or are we going to kowtow to the tech oligarchs and self-censor? I mean, that's sort of the directive that's coming down from Google, is that, these conservative media outlets need to self-censor, remove videos that are currently up, or they risk demonetization and if not a total ban from Google. It's an incredibly dangerous precedent. And today it's the election results that are under dispute. Tomorrow, what is it going to be? Criticism of the potential Biden administration. Where does this end? And that's the dangerous precedent, the slippery slope. I typically don't like using that term, but I think it's applicable here.
Where are the sort of hearts and minds right now of White House and campaign staff that you're talking to about all of this? I mean, just, and I'm asking for, obviously without attribution, but when you speak to people who are either in this White House or who were working on and still working on the campaign in some capacity, what are their feelings about how this is going at this stage?
Yeah, so I was actually at drinks last night with somebody from the White House. It's very well placed with senior staff, and listen, they still look at this as a battle that's worth waging. They have not capitulated one bit. They're not looking for jobs. They're sticking with the president until there is a declared winner in the outcome of this election, which to this point we don't have. Until the Electoral College confirms the outcome of the election, until the Supreme Court has the opportunity to weigh in, for instance, in this case that came up just this week out of Texas, they remain loyal to the president. They're continuing to fight. They're trying to help where they can, where it's legally permissible in the legal battle. The campaign staff is still working over in Roslyn, Virginia every day. Obviously, Rudy and Jenna Ellis are dealing with COVID right now, but the overall legal team has not wavered one bit. So listen, I still think there's a lot of fight here. We're coming up to some critical dates. We're coming up to some critical inflection points in this battle. I think that the case that Texas has brought to the Supreme Court, directly to the Supreme Court, to bar electors from Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin from casting their votes. Because they view that there was an unlawful, unconstitutional change to the way that voting procedures were administered in the run-up to the election. That will really, I think that is a critical moment in this battle. When the Supreme Court hears that, if there's a compelling case that's made before the court, and they decide to weigh in there, that could totally change the trajectory and a lot of the enthusiasm we're feeling on our side of the aisle.
Speaking of Harlan Hill, he's a political consultant and knows the ins and outs of what's going on inside the swamp very, very well. Harlan, you also understand the international political consulting and that side of things a bit. When you're seeing these reports about Swalwell and Chinese, influence operations. What do people who don't follow this stuff and work in this stuff, what do they need to know? I mean, how common is it, and what are some of the ways or some of the mechanisms in place for an incredibly wealthy and influential foreign adversary like China to buy people off and get Americans inside D.C., even including up to on Capitol Hill, to do their bidding?
Well, so I can speak to this in terms of articulating how easy it would be in theory for a foreign adversary to impact our elections. I haven't personally witnessed it, but in this particular case with Eric Swalwell and the Chinese national, it's the primary driver in politics, as we all know, is money. And if you're able to put someone that is incredibly well placed, that networks actively, using unlimited resources with the backing of a foreign power like China, to build a network of fundraisers to push money towards particular candidates that you think would advantage your employer, that's a really easy thing to do. Now, you can't have the direct flow of Chinese dollars from China or from a Chinese national into a political campaign. That is illegal. But one thing that I haven't heard very much about recently, but I do think is at least in theory possible, is that some of these foreign nationals could be setting up 501c4s, different nonprofit organizations that do have the ability to run political advertising. And their donors, their financial resources, the source of their funds for those organizations do not have to be disclosed by law. They don't have, it's not like a contribution to a political campaign, whereas to be filed with the FEC. That is not the case with a 501c4. So, Buck, it is very possible that in addition to what we know the Chinese are doing to influence our elections, starting all the way down at mayors and state legislators, all the way up to congressmen. In addition to that, there could be a whole nother layer to this that I think should be investigated. Some of the C4s that go out and support various different elected officials or candidates for elected office, those C4s, where is the money coming from? It's something, if we spent 4 years talking about Russian collusion and Russian interference in the election in 2016, and we came up with nothing. But I would suspect, based on this story that we saw about Eric Swalwell, there are many more cases like that, and there are many cases that could be far worse.
We're speaking to Harlan Hill. He's a D.C.-based political consultant and a guy who knows how this game is played. And Harlan, with that in mind, I know that people pay you for your advice and your work on campaign strategy, and you know a lot of the people that do this. I mean, this is it's a little bit of a network, right? People know other people, and they all do these campaigns, and they're the ones who are known in D.C., and whether it's a local congressional race in Montana or it's a governor's race in Florida, the D.C. consultants, fan out, and they're involved. How are you feeling from what you're seeing and hearing about this absolutely critical runoff in Georgia for these 2 Senate seats? What are you hearing, and what can you give us about our prospects and the way this is being handled by the GOP?
Yeah, so we're actively helping in Georgia, not directly with either of the campaigns, but through a PAC on the outside. And so we have access to some polling. And you know what? I think it's going to be very close. The Democrats are doing an incredibly good job of building out this grassroots campaign to have people from all over the country making phone calls, people flying in to knock doors, lots of volunteers. So they're building that out. And then they have a tremendous influx of cash that's dropping there. Now, I also think that we have to take very seriously the grassroots campaign that is developing on the right. There are a lot of Trump voters in the state of Georgia that feel like they were disenfranchised, that they were robbed, that their election was stolen from them. And so there are 2 camps there, and that bears out in the polling. people that are just so frustrated with the process and they don't believe in it and they're just going to stay home, and people that are motivated even more to get out. Now, if I were talking directly to the campaigns, which I am not allowed to do because we're helping a PAC on the outside, I mean, I would say they need to wrap their arms around Trump even more than they've already done to make sure that those very dependable far-right, pro-Trump Republican voters that show up to every Republican primary, that show up to every general election, don't feel as though this election is going to be stolen, that they have a voice and that they have fighters in Purdue and Loeffler. So I, watching the rally the other night when President Trump went down to Valdosta, Georgia, to support both of those candidates, I felt like they could have done more. In fact, I think some of that bared out in the reaction of the crowd, where there were some boos for both of them. Because I think that I think that Georgia's hardcore Republican voters expected more out of these two.
Is Georgia going to be in play going forward, or was this a one-off, you think, this election?
It was in play back in 2018, too. I mean, the margin of victory was very slim in the governor's race there. So, yeah, Georgia has become more of a swing state. As we've seen states like Pennsylvania and Ohio for sure. Ohio is as conservative as Alabama at this point. That's not reflected in their current governor, who's awful. But in terms of the rest of the state government, it is very, very conservative. Look at a state like Michigan that is overall trending further to the right. Wisconsin is the same thing. Minnesota is in play for us. And so it's only normal with certain migration patterns within the country, and then also as different age groups come of age, that there are going to be some shifts in the electorate. So yeah, Georgia is going to be a swing state moving forward. This is not a flash in the pan.
Harlan Hill, political consultant, D.C. Harlan, before we let you get back to consulting and helping to keep pushing forward the values and principles that you and I share, give the folks some optimism here politically.
Yeah. Well, listen, in a worst case scenario that we lose the White House to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I think Joe Biden is going to capitulate to the far left of his party in terms of policy. He's making some concessions right now in terms of appointments to appoint people that are a little more moderate, according to the media, and according to progressives than they would like. But it's a good thing for us. Let the Democrats go far out to the left. Let them go far beyond what is palatable for mainstream Americans. Let them try but fail to do some outrageously socialist, borderline communist in some cases programs. And in 2022, the Trump base of the Republican Party is going to fight back with a vengeance. And President Trump isn't going to forget the people that were loyal to him in this period of time. He is going to go around the country, leverage the hundreds of millions of dollars that he is raising for his new PAC to support true MAGA candidates. And he is going to run the table in 2022. The midterms are always a backlash against the incumbent party. And we're going to be incredibly well organized. We're going to be incredibly motivated. And we're going to have tremendous financial backing with a leader in President Donald Trump, because he's not going anywhere, that will lead this party once again back to victory.
Harlan Hill. Harlan, great to have you, my man. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
It's going to be a very different holiday season than we're used to. We all know that. There's all these travel restrictions that people are putting in place now, limitations on who you should see. And no matter what, it's going to be tougher to see people this holiday. But you can still reach out, bring them some joy, show them that you care with Bloomsy Box. Now, these are incredible flowers. I've got them in my home. I've sent them to my girlfriend. I've sent them to family members. And it's great because you can also get a Bloomsy Box subscription. They come straight from the farm. They come early. They're picked at just the right time and sent to you, so they'll stay fresh. When you see the look on someone's face that you care about when these flowers come into bloom, they'll send you a selfie with them in the background. You do a FaceTime. It's incredible. All you have to do is go to bloomsybox.com, use the promo code BUCK. That will get you 15% off. So send someone this holiday some love with Bloomsy Box. BLOOMSYBOX. Bloomsybox.com. Use the promo code BUCK. Send someone flowers this holiday. Brighten up their Christmas, their Hanukkah, their New Year's with Bloomsy Box.
First, my first 100 days is going to require, I'm going to ask for a masking plan. Everyone for the first 100 days of my administration to wear a mask. It will start with my signing an order on day one to require masks where I can under the law, like federal buildings, interstate travel on planes, trains, and buses.
People are already masking. It's already happening. Everywhere you go, people are masked up. I don't even know what this guy thinks. I don't know what country he thinks he's living in. You can't walk. I can't see people outside on the street in New York City without masks on. But they just keep on saying it. Real masking has never been tried. It's like real communism has never been tried. So don't pay attention to the failures. Don't pay attention to what you can see yourself. Just keep listening. Just keep doing what you're told. That is clearly their plan. And it's just absurd. But there's also this other thing the Biden team and Joe Biden himself has been doing, creating this identity politics divide with COVID and for COVID sufferers. Here's what I mean. We have to hear about, there's this old joke in journalism about how, asteroid going to hit the Earth and kill all life tomorrow. Women and minorities hardest hit. That's left-wing journalism in a nutshell. It's always, it's the word. Let's find groups, that we constantly are telling our readership are victimized and get unfair treatment. And we always find a way to make whatever the issue is about how they're being victimized again. Here's Joe Biden telling us that he's separating us out by ethnic group. Play 13.
Last week, COVID-19 was the #1 cause of death in America. For Black, Latino, and Native Americans, who are nearly 3 times as likely to die from it, COVID-19 is a mass casualty. For families and friends left behind is a gaping hole in your heart that will never be fully healed. As a country, we've been living with this pandemic for so long, we're at risk of becoming numb to its toll on all of us. We're resigned to feel that there's nothing we can do, that we can't trust one another, that we must accept death, pain, and sorrow. We're in the midst of this deadly pandemic that has infected almost 15 million Americans. 1 out of every 22 people in our country.
Enough of this moron. I've had enough. Okay. Why? I want to ask Joe Biden, why does it affect, as he says, Black, Latino, and Native Americans at 3 times the rate? I'm asking that question. I'm curious to know. I want to hear what they'll yell at you and say it's so obvious, and then you'll get 5 different answers, 10 different answers. Also, why doesn't he talk about the age differentiation? Because people over 70 are 100 times at least at the risk of people under 40. Why doesn't he talk about that? Once you learn about home title theft, you realize how easy this crime is for the bad guys. Then you realize you got to take action because the usual identity theft services do not protect you. Here's how home title theft works. The bad guys, cyber thieves, they find your home's title online. Then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off, put themselves on, and start taking out loans against your home's equity. You often won't find out about this until you receive payment demands in the mail, perhaps even a foreclosure notice. You have to take action now to create a virtual barrier around your home's title. Go with the experts I trust at Home Title Lock. All you have to do is go to HomeTitleLock.com, use the promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. You can also check online to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. That will get you 30 free days of protection and the ability to check to see at the site if your home's title has already been compromised and you don't know it yet. So go to HomeTitleLock.com, use that promo code RADIO.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly what they have been doing. And again, I think, unfortunately, the Chinese effort here is much deeper than people in Washington are willing to admit. Listen, I can just tell you that intelligence agencies have made very clear to senators, and I know because I've seen the briefings, I've heard the briefings, I've been in them. They've made clear that the Chinese have a massive, sprawling espionage effort. They are trying to influence senators. They're trying to influence elected representatives, mayors, governors, all of the above. They are actively trying to spy on elected officials and other Americans. We know with companies like TikTok, China is hungry for every piece of data that they can get on the American people, and they are leveraging every technology in that they have with companies like TikTok and others, trying to pursue partnerships with American companies to try to gather that information on Americans. And unfortunately, what has D.C. done about it? Basically nothing. I mean, nothing. They've just looked the other way. This is why it's time to stand up.
It's true. In fact, there are very powerful interests, including in the media, that have been working to downplay just the massive cyber espionage campaign that China has been waging against us for decades. This has been going on for over 20 years now. We'll never know the full scope and scale of the information that they've stolen from us. As I've said before, it is civilization shifting in its power and in the gravity of this situation. This is an enormous problem. Underplayed, not talked about enough, not pushed enough nearly in our own media, because there are a lot of people that benefited from it. You know, think about this. If you're a content creator, you're a media organization, you want to get access to the Chinese market? Yes or no? Even if you can't get access to the Chinese market, do you want access to Chinese money in America? Chinese investors, people coming up with all these different ways to infuse money into the system. I see even Georgetown University is now coming under some degree of scrutiny for the fact that there's a lot of Chinese money. There also is a lot of Saudi money there. I mean, our university system, which is also a part of this propaganda apparatus, our university system is doing everything that it can to get as much outside, as much foreign capital as possible. And a big part of all of this is for those countries that send these donations to know that they have influence now. That there's certain kinds of professors, certain kinds of programs they want to push. The Confucius Institutes, set up all over the United States. These are Chinese efforts. It's supposed to be about teaching the Chinese language, and it's all meant to be in good faith and building bonds and relationships. No. It's infiltration. It's meant to steer our policy in certain directions. And I'm sorry, but we cannot let it go that for years, the Democrats have been telling us that Russia is the threat. For years, Democrats have been telling us that we need to be worried about our primary competitor, the Russian government. And it's just not true. It was an obvious lie, so you have to ask, why would they lie to us in that way? Why would they make these claims? Well, perhaps it's because they were benefiting from it. Perhaps it's because Eric Swalwell, among others, have been compromised or even just been steered. Remember, influence operations don't have to be blackmail-based. Influence operations don't have to be about getting somebody to pass classified or break the law or betray their country. And I'm going to say this. The people that are saying that Swalwell, they're insinuating that he passed classified. I don't know if he did or he didn't, but we don't have any proof of that. And you're really accusing someone of treason at that level. So we should be, we're not them. We're not the other side. We're not the left. We don't just smear people and ruin them and destroy their character, destroy their reputations without evidence. Now, there is evidence that there was an influence operation run here and that Swalwell was at least steered by it and compromised by it in some way, that there was a Chinese spy who fled after there was an FBI investigation. She fled. We all think she was a Chinese spy and that she was a honeypot in the parlance of, espionage, amateur espionage sleuths, right? We all talk about this. And now people are bringing up questions about, well, if Swalwell was targeted, who else? what other Democrats that have always taken a softer approach toward China, what other Democrats out there may have been pushed in a certain policy direction? Well, Swalwell, what's the classic move? You know, it used to be for Democrats when you're caught, and it doesn't matter what you were caught doing. If you were caught sexually harassing members of your media company staff, right? Or if you were caught, in the newsroom, grabbing women from behind or something, and you were really in trouble, you know what you do if you're a Democrat? You say, well, I'm going to do some introspection. I'm sorry if I caused any offense, and I'm going to go after the NRA. What's the only thing? I mean, the NRA's had some trouble recently anyway of its own. So what's the only thing that's a better, more effective get-out-of-jail-free card than I'm going to go after the NRA? Oh, you all know. It's the Trump team. I'm going to go after Trump. He's the reason for this. Play 4.
I can't talk too much about the details of the case, even though others may have violated their oath. I'm not going to violate mine. But the Axios story made it absolutely clear that no information was ever shared, except, Jim, the people who did share classified information were the people who leaked this story. And to do that against a critic of the president, they may think that they're going to silence me. They're not going to silence me. But what they are going to do is they're going to make others think twice when they're asked to sit down and provide defensive information about people like this. I hope none of my colleagues ever find themselves in the position that I found myself in by having to sit down with the FBI because someone who had helped the campaign was trying to do this. But I hope every person would want to help their country, just as I did.
Oh, yeah, like a true patriot, of course. Not because he knew that if he lied to them, he was going to get in trouble. What do you mean? You can't trust the FBI? Oh, wait, I thought they were just I thought everything was on the up and up at the FBI. I thought James Comey and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and McCabe were just patriots, man. The FBI has got no problems, no politicization. Oh, now that a Democrat finds himself on the wrong side of what may be a leak, we're willing to throw the FBI under the bus suddenly and say, hold on, we can't trust them. This is harming our national security. You know what really harms our national security, my friends? Being completely and utterly blinded to the threat of China because people in our elite circles are benefiting from it, and there is an enormous corporate incentive. And we want to work for corporations and get paid those big paychecks. We want to get their products. Enormous incentive to ignore what's going on here. This is the struggle that was right before our faces that really mattered. And Swalwell was a chief Russia collusion and Russia treason propagandist. He accused the president of treason, and now he says, well, there's not evidence that I was a traitor. Gee, maybe you should learn a lesson here, Swalwell. Maybe you should live your life with some principle. Maybe it wasn't okay to smear a sitting president of the United States as a traitor to his country because it benefited the political interests of your partisan Confederates. I mean, that was a bad idea. And he's learning a lesson of his own here. But Eric Swalwell, what a mediocrity. We have these people in politics. What you see now, the most clear unifying trait of those who rise in elected office in Congress, and I do mean this, you see it more among Democrats, you do among Republicans, but it does exist on the Republican side too. The unifying trait is just a total ruthlessness and moral malleability. Whatever they got to do, they do. Whatever they got to say, they say. We have all these stupid mediocrities who are elevated into high public office just because they'll do whatever they've got to do to get ahead and play the game. And I don't know how we stop this in the system. The best thing I could think of is call them out and try to get as many people as possible to recognize what a bunch of clowns they are. Like Swalwell. I'm not even sitting here making all the cheap fart jokes that I could based on that interview. I'm not going to do that. But I could, right? People are doing it because they see this guy Swalwell as a joke. And now perhaps a risk as well as a joke.
In just a few minutes, I'll sign an executive order to ensure that the United States government prioritizes the getting out of the vaccine to American citizens before sending it to other nations. Now, if necessary, I told you we'll invoke the Defense Production Act, but we don't think it'll be necessary.
So, America first for vaccines that are being produced by American companies and that the American FDA has approved. That seems reasonable to me, right? This is interesting to watch this play out because a government should have a preference for its own people, the people that the government is governing, over just the global community. And some on the left are already saying, "Oh, what is this from Trump?" Yeah, that's right. When you are the country that leads the way and creates these vaccines faster than anybody else, and this is an enormous coup for big pharma, which has gotten a lot of bad press in recent years, especially with all the opioid stuff over at Purdue Pharma, which I know is now gone. But this is the chance that we have for going back to our lives. But I want to be very clear. The way this is being rolled out now, and I don't mean the way that Trump and the administration and even the pharmaceutical companies are, but the way that this is being talked about in the media and the Biden administration, which is now assuming that they are in charge, they are doing this in ways that are concerning. Mandatory vaccination with this, if you are under a certain age, there is no reason for you to be forced to get this, and no one should be forced to get it. But if you're under a certain age, I mean, if you're under 40, are you going to get this? Should be like the flu vaccine. People that are at risk should get it. They should get it. People who are at very low risk, they maybe, it depends. You're going to make 5-year-olds get this? Really? You're going to make 5-year-olds get this vaccine? The state's going to step in and make people take this? If the state can make you stay in your home, make you inject something in your arm, there is a risk to any vaccine. We all know this, right? There is some risk, tolerable risk. Notice that there are some things that cannot be perfect, but that we understand are the best possible option. This would fall into that category for a lot of people, but it's not 100%. The state has taken out of your hands the ability to make those risk mitigation and risk assessment decisions on your own. You're not allowed to do that anymore. Now you're told that you have to do whatever they say. Now you're told that you have to allow the government to inject something in your arm and your family's arm. This is going to be a problem. And what makes me absolutely furious is the simultaneous campaign of, even if you get vaccinated, you don't get to go back to normal. The restrictions, the masking, the social distancing, the lockdowns, those go away when we say they do. Oh, I thought this was about the science. I thought this was about making sure that we're doing everything that we can to get back to normal as quickly as possible. Certainly doesn't feel like that, does it? Certainly doesn't feel like that's what's happening when you have people in this way who continue to show you that they want to control you and they want to push these mandates and these lockdowns going much forward. And look at the clowns who are in charge. I mean, here's Governor Cuomo talking to Fauci. It's all so funny, isn't it? Play 15.
I think you have tremendous credibility, not just across the country, but across this state. And I think your voice on saying that the vaccines are safe would be important. I said that as soon as the vaccine is deemed ready and safe, I'll be the first one to take a vaccine. Maybe we enlist you. I'll do it with you. We'll do an ad telling New Yorkers it's safe to take the vaccine to put us together. We're like the modern day De Niro and Pacino. You can be whichever you want. You can be the De Niro or Pacino, Fauci and Cuomo. I'll give you a friend. Who do you want to be, De Niro or Pacino? Which one do you want to be?
I love them both. I love them both. I don't want to insult one or the other. If I say one, I don't want to hurt the feelings of the other.
Yeah.
So either one.
Who's the politician?
Little bureaucrat Fauci loves all the attention and the celebrity and the power. Don't let the little I'm a little grandfatherly guy, I'm just here to protect you, to give you good advice. He loves this. This guy's been toiling away for decades. Nobody even knew who he was until this year, really. I remember I interviewed him a couple years ago about the flu, and it was like, the flu is bad. Don't get the flu. Wash your hands. Kind of like COVID when he talks about COVID. Wash your hands. Don't cough in anyone's face. He loves this attention and this authority and this power. And he is quoted as well this week as saying, the vaccine's good, but the U.S. must overcome COVID-19 denial. I hate when they say this. I hate when they make up these stories, because, yeah, they're making them up, of people who their last words on their deathbed were, I wish I had masked more, or I wish I had taken COVID more seriously. This is a lie. This is not what people are saying. All right, that's not people's last words. There isn't some huge contingent of Americans who think that COVID is all fake. There's no such thing as COVID. No one's actually getting sick. That doesn't exist. But this is a way of avoiding a much more important conversation because it's based in what's really happened. Let's look at Fauci's contributions to this pandemic. He told us not to wear masks at the beginning. That is a fact. He told us endlessly in the early days that hand washing was critical, which led people to wipe down their groceries, led people to go around all the time with gloves on. Did that do anything? He said that test and trace would be essential. Yeah? How's test and trace working out? I've been telling you since May that there's no way, based on the caseload and logistics, we'd be able to test and trace a damn thing. Who was right, me or Fauci? Yeah. Test and trace was essential, he said. And also, where was Fauci? Where was this voice of reason and science, as we're always told, when it came to the school shutdowns? Where was that? Oh, yeah. He didn't want to upset the Democrats. He didn't want to upset his future bosses in the Democrat Party in his mind. So he decided to be quiet on that. And where's the data on restaurants in New York City? New York Post column today asking that question. I'm wondering, does anyone want to tell us how many people have we traced in with restaurants and infections? How many? Why isn't that number published? Why don't we know how many people got sick outdoor dining in LA? We have these test and tracers. Oh, you mean we don't have that data? Let's ask why.